but the underlying challenge for the industry is very much around quality.
Maintaining quality at a marketplace level, and when you're putting all the sources at one place.
Our PureScore product offering, okay, that's built into the platform.
How do you have been seeing these long-term impacts when you see quality isn't being prioritized? Welcome back to the Collaborative Canvas. Today, we're excited to have a distinguished guest who brings a wealth of knowledge, experience in the field of data quality and insights. With over 18 years in the data, SaaS, and PaaS industry, James has consistently driven growth and the innovation across APAC and Europe. As the managing director of APAC at PureSpectrum, he leads the regional strategy, operations, and business development for one of the fastest growing companies dedicated to high quality data and insight solutions. James has honed his expertise in GTM strategy, multi-market P&L management, and customer success. And he's passionate about solving complex data challenges and empowering teams to achieve their goals have been remarkable. In today's conversation, we'll explore some crucial topics around data quality and marketplaces sampling. And that has been an evolving landscape of fraud detection and how to strike the right balance between speed and reliability in the data collection. James, thank you for joining us today. And how about you give a brief introduction about yourself to the audience that don't know you?
Absolutely, Ankesh. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come on and say hello. I think you've already done a good job of introducing me. Yes, I've spent a considerable amount of time in the industry, the last 3.5 years plus, obviously with PureSpectrum. Prior to that, I was managing director for Sint in the same region. Taluna before that. All the way going back to Greenfield Online days back in 2003. But for the majority of my career now, I've spent that across the Asia Pacific region.
And who would better answer my question when it comes to marketplaces, data integrity, fraud, and overall quality? So let's dive into the quick first question, James. I think we've been seeing a lot of cases where quality has been much talked about. And we've been seeing, conversion rates are falling down. We are seeing, limited resources on client surveys when it comes to, sampling those client surveys because of n number of things. And in recent conversation with one of my associates, he mentioned that, people are kind of punching in, say, 5 minutes for a 10-minute survey and kind of, working things out in favor of CPIs to be lower. And that's again, it's kind of data quality that gets impacted because respondents are also now they're well versed of what kind of a programmatic sampling is all about. So let's get a little bit involved in how this fraud is evolving and what challenges and opportunities does this evolution present at the moment.
Okay, look, I think you're absolutely right. This is a hot topic and continues to be a hot topic. Certainly, obviously, there is a lot of talk right now around AI and various other things, but the underlying challenge for the industry is very much around quality. I think, first of all, just so we're clear, I would say that any of these challenges are not specific just to marketplaces. Okay, I think for someone who's been in the industry as long as I have, I'm very much aware that the traditional panel model, that proprietary panel model, doesn't exist anymore outside of very, very few domestic cases, okay, and certainly not regional or global providers. The challenges that are faced, are very much, I could sit here and list them. They're certainly not limited to ghost completes, fraud, bots, survey farms, click farms, human and bot farms, panelist fatigue, design failure, and of course, cost pressures. Okay, all of these are challenges for any provider in the market right now. What I would say about marketplaces, and especially ours, we are built for purpose to embrace multi-sourcing. okay, which is ultimately what's happening, in the supply world right now. And we are specifically set up to take those multi-sources and bring them into a uniformed environment so that we can be very confident about the checks, the quality checks, the process that they actually have to go through before they actually reach a client survey.
And we spoke about briefly on during SMR about the conversion rates, because again, maintaining quality at a marketplace level, and when you're putting all the sources at one place, I think an overall the impact on to the overall data integrity and the project success for clients is there. How are you maintaining or managing those challenges in terms of the quality?
Look, absolutely. Look, conversion rates are an interesting one to discuss, okay? And I do think that there is a theory that a lot of this, a lot of these quality challenges, this fraud, etc., is dramatically impacting conversion rates. For us, and perhaps I'll talk a little bit more about it in a minute. We actually, our PureScore product offering, okay, that's built into the platform, is designed to catch as much fraud, as much challenge before the panelist actually engages. So the reality is the conversion rates within the survey experience itself are really only impacted by the targeting that's actually happening, okay? Whether or not that's a targetable audience or not, okay? It may be a brand that's new, it may be an idea that's new, etc. Okay, and also whether or not the survey ultimately, like the details, the mechanism set up correctly. Okay, we're still very, we're still very proud at a global level that we maintain a 7% global reconciliation rate. Okay, at the end of each survey. Okay, and considering the volume of completes that obviously that we undertake, that's testament to what we're doing on our side and how we're collaborating with our customers in working together in the survey experience itself to make sure that obviously the panelists themselves has a good experience.
And can you just highlight a little bit about the Pure Score? Because I think that's one of your key measures, and you briefly talked about it during SOMAR as well. How do you employ that Pure Score to ensure data quality within your marketplaces is like amazing?
Look, absolutely, absolutely. Look, for those that don't know, I mean, as I mentioned, PureSpectrum was custom built, okay, in this multi-source environment. From the outset of PureSpectrum, we had something called PureScore. It's now on its third iteration, and effectively, what it does is it looks at the behavior, okay, of the respondent. As you can imagine, for the most part, we are not scripting and hosting surveys. Okay, so the only time that we really get to interact with the respondents, okay, is a short window prior to them entering the survey. Okay, but in that window, we are able, the first time we see a new respondent, to create a benchmark for a series of questions. Okay, we then store them against a unique ID, and then we can return to them each time a respondent interacts with the platform itself. So what that starts to do is to build up a score. Okay, and effectively it's 0 out of 10. Anything below 5, and the respondent will not actually reach the customer survey. Now, that's only half of the battle. Okay, the other half of the battle is how we work with our customers, okay, to make sure that during the survey experience itself, that they're asking the right questions, okay.
And
Because we're doing this at a respondent level, we're not looking at a good supplier or a bad supplier, okay. We're looking for that ideal respondent. Okay, so within the survey itself, we would expect the customer to be asking trap questions. Maybe they have honey trap questions to catch bots. Make sure that they have good open-end opportunities. Okay, that we can then look at that and take the feedback during the survey experience, and then of course afterwards as well. Okay,
and
all of that builds a living score for the respondent.
And James, you mentioned during the initial thing that, there are issues with respect to click farms. There were issues with respect to, survey length and the design.
Mhm,
And these all affect the conversion rate in one or the other way. And eventually it also affects the client's project timelines. The reason why they
mhm,
come to marketplaces is because, they get an ample amount of opportunities to reach out to larger audience, and they're not
mhm,
restricted to, as you mentioned, those, I think panel management stuff has long gone. We used to work and, we used to get better conversion rates back then. But within
mhm,
considering, they're click farms. They're people who are just, giving you, and as you just
mhm.
mentioned, that this not about uh, suppliers. It is about respondent. It is about, how you put the question to ensure you get the better conversion rates. When it comes to low quality data on marketplaces, I just wanted to know, how do you have been seeing these long-term impacts when you see quality isn't being prioritized? What is that effective challenge that you guys fix it, as soon as you ensure that, to get the conversion rates higher? I mean, I think these are bigger challenges at the
Okay.
moment.
I mean, look, I think that the conversion rates, as mentioned, they vary from customer to customer, okay, and what they're really looking for. We have very large customers that buy very programmatically from us, okay, and we'll be looking at conversion rates of 60 to 70% based on their LOIs, based on their target audience, okay. But obviously, then at the other end of the spectrum, you're looking at very niche, complex target audiences. And then conversion rates can be very, very difficult. Okay. Look, the challenge is the efficacy window of how quickly you have to respond to the likes of bots, click farms, etc., has shrunk dramatically. Maybe it used to be 6 months. Now we're kind of 2 to 3 months. So you continually have to update. Okay, your I guess your internal combat team on how you're learning, how you're innovating, how your product is getting better to try and catch a lot of these. The biggest, I think that when these things happen, the concern is not so much at the client felt by the client in terms of the quality of the data, because we're able to work together to catch a lot of this. What it can do is impact the traffic, okay, and then obviously the traffic could potentially create longer timelines, okay? But ultimately it is a challenge. Again, to reiterate, we're not looking at particular supply sources, okay? Because we have multiple, anything from, let's say, 5 to 20 sources that are by design have a specific allocation, okay, market to market, to prevent any bias, okay, from a single source, okay. But it still is a challenge, okay, to make sure that we're balancing that, okay. The problem with the type of fraud, with the type of challenge that we see now, is you can't immediately detect it. Okay, you actually need to look for signs of it, for indicators. Okay, I think one of the analogies that kind of that we use internally is kind of like this, especially around things like open ends. Okay, is like you're looking for like the Goldilocks scenario. Okay, so it used to be a bad open end was a bad open end. Okay, well now actually a good open end, well that might be too good. So you're actually kind of the safe zone is somewhere in the middle. Okay, so not too warm, not too hot, etc., just right. These are the sorts of challenges. So you need to be looking at not a single incident of a respondent, okay, on a project. You need to be looking over time. And this is again where something like PureScore comes into play, because we literally have billions of sessions of data spanning back, 7 years. Okay, so we're able to track and understand, okay, this looks like it makes sense, okay,
Yeah.
when there is a challenge. But again, the majority of the problems are caught beforehand.
Well, I think the one thing that you very categorically mentioned, and I completely agree to that point, that, when it comes to overriding a challenge, it's not that, one day kind of a thing. You probably have to visualize the data, which, as you mentioned, it's been like 7 years you've been, working on those things. You also mentioned that, the way you balance things up It's not about, of course, every time it's suppliers and you don't want to create a bias. But with that balancing thing, I still firmly believe that marketplaces gives an edge over speed with the quality. How do you anticipate that this marketplace from traditional research panels, and for past one decade we've been seeing marketplaces have been evolving a lot and people are
Mhm.
kind of relying on them. What do you see the next best innovation that can
Mhm.
you probably anticipate as a new marketplace supply chain?
Well, I think that's an interesting question. As you mentioned, obviously marketplaces, or have been called many things. They've been called aggregators, etc. For many years. Um, and of course, there's a lot more guardrails. There's a lot more sense and by design to them now. Okay. In that same time period, we've seen because of the downward price pressures, because of the pressure on field work, we have seen average LOIs, for example, come down. Okay. So by nature, this is getting faster. Okay. I think the average LOI on our platform so far this year is probably about 13 to 14 minutes. Okay, which actually is very healthy compared to some of the
Exactly.
LOIs that we certainly have been experienced in the past. But in terms of where it goes now, I don't think we're in a position to start going, right, well, there's a lot more that we can do before making sure that we've done everything to preserve quality right now. Okay. I think that there's definite a flaw when it comes to how low prices can go, etc. By design, you want to make sure that conversion obviously is going up. We're focused on, again, how to improve the respondent experience, okay, from what we can control. Make sure we're focusing on things like targeting, okay, making sure that obviously from a quality perspective that we're improving Pure Score. Last year we announced Pure Text, which is a subset of Pure Score, which looks at the validity of open ends. Okay, so that is an AI learning model that's starting to look for gibberish. Is it in the right language? Does it make sense? Is it in context? Okay, to support that. Okay, because I think it's important with anything to make sure that you're doing as much as you can with the challenges right now, as well as, of course, trying to anticipate what's going to come next. Okay, and I think certainly if you listen to the industry, that's very much around AI. Okay, that's very much around potentially synthetic data, digital twins, etc. Okay, but I definitely think there's a lot of common sense conversations coming now around pricing. Okay, around incentives, around we can't just continue to go lower and faster and lower and faster, okay, when we're actually doing with individuals, with actual humans.
And I think that sweets to the ear when you say 7% reconciliation rates and 13 to 14 minutes LOI. I think at any point of time, survey designs definitely impact a lot of things because it starts
Mhm.
from there. And if you guys are kind of bringing it down to 13 and 14 minutes as an average LOI across so many surveys, I think you guys are doing a commendable job. So thank you so much for sharing these invaluable insights, James. And
Not a problem. Oh,
and from your expertise on the data quality and fraud detection to your perspective of innovations with marketplace sampling, and especially, this, you mentioned Pure Tech, which is more like an AI-driven open-end
yeah.
detection. I think it's very clear that PureSpectrum's dedication to delivering trustworthy, actionable data is making a real impact. And as we look at the future of the data collection, I think James' advice on assessing how sample quality, staying ahead of the fraud, and balancing speed with accuracy, it offers a valuable takeaways for all our listeners. I'm sure they will hear it, they will come back. And if you really do have more questions, I would encourage you to just mention it into the comments, and I'll seek answers from James for you, and I'll come back to you onto that. And to everyone tuning in, we hope this discussion gives you a deeper insights into the data quality and strategies for sourcing reliable data in your projects. James, it's been a pleasure having you on the collaborative canvas, and thank you again for your time and perspective.
Ankesh, thank you too.